Thanks for coming out, everybody. For those of you I don't know, my name is Dan Devine. I'm the mayor of the city of West Allis, and I might have been the guy that was knocking on your door over the past few weeks trying to let you know about this meeting. I'm going to give you just a brief history of what brought us here. Personally, the 60th and Burnham neighborhood has been something that's been on my radar for quite a few years. We had tried to start something up with a few businesses a few years ago. It didn't really take off. And then a few years back, I was at a conference in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I took a bus tour attached to that conference, and they drove us through a neighborhood that was kind of going through a regeneration that was called Belmont. And the Better Block Foundation was the organization that spearheaded that movement. Furthermore, a friend of mine who I know from these conferences is a mayor of a suburb of St. Louis, and he was talking about this fantastic speaker, Jason Roberts, that he saw at the Missouri Municipal League, who happens to be Jason Roberts, the Better Block Foundation, right here tonight. So I heard it from a few people from different parts of the country, and being that when I look at the 60th and Burnham neighborhood, and I've said this to a couple people tonight, when you look at the city of West Allis, we have our downtown, we have our Highway 100, but we don't have a lot of actual neighborhoods that have storefronts and an intersection surrounded by residential. And when I look at that neighborhood, I see a lot of great restaurants. I see there's a pizza place, several Mexican restaurants, sub shop, businesses, dentist's office. But then there's some other businesses, and there's some things that we could do to make this a more friendly area, a more active area, and a more vibrant neighborhood. But I can't do it alone. I will now quick introduce the two alder people from this district. In the back of the room, in the blue jacket is Alderman Vince Vitale, and in the yellow shirt is Alderman Mickey Czapleski. If you don't know them, get to know them and get their cell phone numbers, because you can call them when you have issues. You're welcome. So I really felt that the best way to spearhead this intersection in this neighborhood was to work with Better Block and to try to get business owners, try to get residents, try to get visitors, try to get everybody together and talk about what can be better there. I don't have a plan. I have a lot of ideas, but I want to hear your ideas. I want to hear your input. A lot of you I met have lived here for generations, have raised your families in this neighborhood. Some of you have lived in this neighborhood for 1-2 years. Some people I met just moved in months ago. Some people just bought buildings in the neighborhood, Scardinas. So I really want to get us all together, and I want to brainstorm, and I want to revitalize that corridor, and we can't do it alone. So with that being said, I am going to turn things over to Jason Roberts from the Better Block Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. I'm going to scooch over here because I'm going to use this laptop. All right, from Dallas, Texas. It's great to be here, and it looks like we sagged right in between where it was cold. Now it's nice, and it's cold. It's gonna be cold, I guess, next couple of days. So we're enjoying our time here. I've had a lot of things like fried cheese curds, so I may need to have a defibrillator on the plane when I leave. But very good stuff. So I head up the Better Block Foundation, again based out of Dallas, Texas. I'm gonna kind of show a presentation about our work, how it started, and where it's gone. And then the ideas and what can possibly be done and created here in West Allis. So with that, I'll start with kind of my early inspiration for my work. This is actually a place I remember seeing on postcards. This is in Paris. It's called Montmartre. I remember when I first saw this picture, I thought, man, this is gorgeous. I wish this was in my neighborhood. If it was there, I'd go there every day. I want to get a cup of coffee here. I love the little streets and how the ivy spills off the building. I could live above it and walk down these little streets. I want to retire here. I asked my friends, what do you think about places like this? And they said, we wish we had them too. We'd have our kids work here. We'd put it on postcards. And I said, well, if we all collectively wish we had more places like this, then why do we keep building places that look like this? And that was the early genesis of our work, saying like we build things all the time for our communities, places that we are to interact with, and they can either be places that we make us feel like we're having a great life and we love the place around us, or they can make it just feel like it's just a transactional space, right? So I also started trying to study places around the world that were very old. This is in Rome. And looking at places that were 2,000 years old and saying, okay, why are these places still working? And I'm seeing these old plazas with young people, old people, fountains, with markets. They're full of life. I went to Holland and saw grandparents riding bicycles with grandkids, and they were on these little buildings. And I saw these places that were built with legacies. Again, hundreds or thousands of years old and still working. So I saw these things, and I got on a plane. I go back to Dallas, where I live, and say, well, what are we building? What are we using all of our resources and our time? What's going to be our legacy we're handing down? I saw a lot of these things. I got pretty depressed because I thought we're spending billions of dollars on these things, and I will never be able to ride a bicycle with my grandchild here one day. There's not a fountain I can enjoy. I don't have these spaces that I can really use and hand down to future generations. The other problem I faced was I wasn't an IT planner or urban planner or architect. I was an IT guy. So I was your computer guy. So I would have been the guy setting up this laptop and this projector and all of these things in my neighborhood. So I was not the guy that was going to go in and help kind of turn around my neighborhood, but I wanted to get involved and show up and do things. One of the issues I faced with was people told me, well, first of all, Jason, this isn't Europe. This is Dallas. It's a car culture. Everyone drives here. We're not going to walk around and have cafe experiences. But I saw other places that had formerly looked just like my city, with cars everywhere, everyone driving everywhere. But they had transformed them over time back into great pedestrian places. And they'd taken some infrastructure away from the car and turned it back to people places. That's in Copenhagen. Everybody also blamed the weather. We can't do cool things, nice things outside, because in Dallas specifically, they said it was too hot. And I thought, well, okay, it's hot in Dallas, but it gets hot in New Orleans. It gets hot in Austin. People go outside. I hear the same thing about the cold, though, too. It gets cold in Stockholm. This is in Lithuania. I was in the winter. But I noticed what they do is they embrace the cold. They put out heaters. They put out chairs. They have mulled wine that's heated outside, and they figure out ways to embrace their climate. So there's actually a saying in Danish that says there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing. So I thought we'll try to adopt that kind of idea with our work. And so the other issue that we faced was that we were told, I was told I want to get involved, I want to show up and help. I went to City Hall, and they said, you know what, we've done all these plans. We always plan, and we have community meetings. But if you want to get involved, you can pull out our old plans. We have bike plans we worked on in 2011. You can pull those off and look at those for a while. We never built that. We've got our forward Dallas plan that we did 20 years ago that never got built. We've got 2035 mobility plans. So I thought, wow, Dallas is going to be great in 2035. Right? I hope I make it, right? So I look at all that and thought, okay, it's going to take me a long time to get anything done through these processes. I wanted to do things in my own neighborhood. How can I just start fixing things in my own community? And the first project I took on was I had this old theater. And just so you know where this theater is, in Dallas, I live in a neighborhood called Oak Cliff. And Oak Cliff has historically been considered the bad part of town for easily 50, 60 years. And part of the reason is because we had some bad folks from my neighborhood. So first of all, Bonnie and Clyde are from my neighborhood. Also, Lee Harvey Oswald was from my neighborhood. So, in fact, this building is important because this is kind of ground zero for why we were thought as the bad part of town. This is the Texas Theater. This is where Lee Harvey Oswald was captured after the assassination of JFK, just blocks from my house, and it was closed down. The only reason it had that sign was because Oliver Stone built us that sign for the movie JFK. So I went to the group that was trying to fix it, and they said, we need millions of dollars, but people don't want to come over to the bad side of town. They don't believe in us. And I thought, well, I don't have millions of dollars, but I want to get involved. And so I gathered some neighbors just like this in a room about this size, and I said, why don't we bring 100 people out, and we'll have them all paint and create art and turn this space, our old theater, into an art gallery. So we'll have them paint one night, and the next day we'll open the doors. 24 hours later, we'll turn an art gallery. And so we got our friends together. We built some easels, and the lighting was bad. The power was bad, the plumbing was bad, and minutes before about to open the doors, we thought this is probably going to be an abject failure. It was the middle of the winter, we're in the bad side of town, in a theater that's been closed for 10 years. But when we opened the doors, we had 700 people show up. We sold every piece of art we'd created the night before. But beyond that, though, I had friends and neighbors come out and said, we've been waiting to get into this old building. We wanted to take part. We wanted to get involved. And I thought I was waiting too. So I just realized it just took several of us to get together and say, hey, we all realize that we have a shared problem. How do we gather our resources together and start fixing these things? So in about a few months, I started saying I want to help, I want to get more involved. And the group said, hey, you want to get involved? It showed up to some meetings, and by the third meeting, they threw the keys at me. I became the president of the Texas Theater. So I tell people, be careful when you say you want to help, because you will get vaunted into a high position within the organization. So while now the theater is working, it's an anchor, and it's doing really well in the neighborhood. So I looked at that and thought, what else can I work on in my neighborhood? And I looked at old maps to figure out, well, what can we do to bring people to move back to the neighborhood, to start businesses, to get more involved? And I looked at these old maps and I realized that we had an old trolley car system that ran throughout my neighborhood, just like you guys had here in West Allis. We had an old streetcar system. I pulled up those old maps and I said, wow, that trolley car was pretty important. When we pulled it out, it created a lot of problems. So first of all, my Texas Theater had 650 seats, but only 35 parking spaces, because everybody got there through the trolley car system. So I started attending community meetings like this, and we started talking about what can we do to bring people back to our neighborhood and start businesses. And people said, we just need a Chipotle. If we get a Chipotle, everybody's going to move back, right? Or we heard if we had a Whole Foods, people are going to come back for a Whole Foods. And I said, I got an idea. Why don't we bring back that trolley car system that we got rid of 50 years ago? And people laughed and said, you can't bring back a trolley car. It's been gone for so long. It'll be too hard, cost too much money. I knew very little about trolley cars, but I was a web guy. I knew how to make websites. I went home that night. I made a fake website called the Oak Cliff Transit Authority that looked really official, had boards and newses and histories and pictures of European trams on the front. And the next week, the Dallas Morning News did a story saying, dreaming of the day the streetcars return. That's what Jason Roberts and other members of the recently formed Oak Cliff Transit Authority are hoping. But there were no other members. It was just me. And I had neighbors call me and said, we've got a transit authority in Oak Cliff? That's great, wow. I was like, well, not really, but I really want to advocate for bringing back our old streetcar system, because I think it was important for us to do. So we have formed a 501c3 nonprofit, and we're fighting for these things. And I had people call me and said, I want to help. I had a guy who was a civil engineer said, I will be willing to donate 100 hours pro bono to this project. I had a guy who was 80 years old, had enough parts in his garage to build a trolley car. So I had these interesting characters in my community. So I'm working on that. But while I was working on that, I'm thinking that's going to take me 30 years to do. So we'll work on other projects. And so I started looking at the blocks of buildings in my neighborhood. Say, how do I just start focusing on fixing these blocks that aren't working? And these probably look familiar to you. These might look like some of the blocks in your own neighborhood. So I looked at these blocks and said, okay, well, what have we done to hurt them over time? So one of the things we did is we changed the zoning from retail to light industrial, because we took out the trolley car. We didn't have parking. So we said, well, we don't want a bunch of people going here shopping and all, because there's nowhere for them to park. So we'll just make it into light industrial area. We made the streets one way, so they went high-speed cars drove through faster. We thinned the sidewalks. And then we created all these laws and rules. You don't have to read this, but we had these rules that made it either cost prohibitive or illegal to bring street life back. So just know if we wanted flowers on the sidewalk, it was going to be $1,000 in permitting. If I wanted to have shade awnings over each window, $1,000 per window. Street cafes were going to be $1,000 times area, times market value, times 85%, times 12%. I don't even know what that means. It was illegal for us to put merchandise on the sidewalk. And if you really want to kill your street life, create a law that says it's illegal for crowds to gather on the sidewalk. So we had all those rules, and they were all from 1941. So I looked at our block, and I said, well, obviously it's illegal for us to do anything to bring this back to life. So what would happen if we gathered all of our neighbors together and we took a weekend and we broke every law we possibly could? So that's what we did. We painted our own bike lanes. We owned our own cafe seating. We took the empty buildings and we put murals in the buildings, and we put businesses we always wanted to have in the spaces with our neighbors: bookstores, flower shops, art shops. We gathered art teachers from the local school and said, let's start an art gallery for our kids, and let's do a book drive. We'll get books from all of us. We'll put 5 books at our front yard, and I'll pick them up, and we'll make a bookstore so we can have that, because we want that as a neighborhood. And then we printed off all the laws and rules we were breaking, and we put them in the windows. And we invited our city staff and our mayor out, said, come out to our better block. And they came out, and we thought, oh man, we're all going to go to jail. And they looked around, and they thought, I don't know if we're supposed to be here. But you know what? Now there's hundreds of people using this space now. All the neighbors are out. These blocks are back to life again. People are using these spaces. We need to have more places not like this, not less. So we started seeing people the city start saying, let's see if we can change the rules to make more of this stuff happen. So we got those fees reduced. The zoning voted unanimously to go back to retail. And you saw those empty buildings that had been empty for years get leased shortly after the zoning changes, all by neighbors. People said, that's great, but you didn't want it nice outside. Let's try it in bad weather. So I took the hottest day we could find, 100 degrees outside. And let's do this again. Take another block, no sidewalks on one side, broken up sidewalks on the other, empty buildings, there's a pole with nothing on it, right? There's just this gray ugliness. And thought, how do we make this a place people want to be? So in the middle of the night, we brought out 42 trees. We brought out 100 bushes to create pedestrian islands. We took old pallets from the trash. We made decks so people could sit outside. We painted our own crosswalks. We put tables under the trees, and we put art on the poles. And people came out, and they would not leave. They called their friends and said, "You got to get out here. This looks like Vancouver. It doesn't look like Dallas," which is really confusing, by the way. When I keep hearing West Allis, I keep hearing West Dallas in my head because that's my neighborhood that's just next to us. So we work with them quite a bit. So. The interesting thing is, so this project, we just did this temporarily. So what you see here, we basically just took all the time and energy it takes architects to draw pictures and do renderings, and we said, we're suffering from rendering fatigue. Let's just build it. Let's take the time and energy it takes to talk about what we want and build those things so people can experience it. But we made it temporary, so that way we got over anyone's fears or worst case scenarios. The reason we weren't having things happen, because everybody came up with every worst case scenario possible about why we couldn't have these great things. If we change the streets, it's going to be Carmageddon, or business as we know it's going to crumble, or a lot of whataboutisms. Well, this is great, you want to fix streets, but our real problem is our infant birth fatality rates or something like that. I'm like, well, those are major problems, but what can we do in 30 days to make an environment that will help us thrive and want to be together as neighbors? That's what we can focus on right now, and that's what the Better Block was all about. And some of our ideas kind of were based around this concept of what we say, think small. And part of that is because we found, like, our city, my city of Dallas, said our motto is think big. And what think big meant was we're going to spend $100 million to hopefully get like a convention center hotel to come in. And hopefully that will make a bunch of little things happen around our neighborhood that we want. But I thought, honestly, the places that I love in the world, whether I'm in Dallas or I'm in London or Paris or here in West Dallas, are these little places that you go to all the time that have like the little bookstore, the little flower shop, the little pocket park, the little bakery. Those are the places that we can make as a community a lot faster than that one giant thing that we hope will fix a lot of little things. We found we can use things at the hardware store to actually transform people's perception of place. So first of all, white duct tape looks just like the thermoplastic paint that the city uses to paint stripes on the ground on your streets. We found you could take trash cans from the dollar store and reclad them and make them into beautiful planters. We could take those giant graphics that are in city buses and turn them into crosswalks. And then we can look at our streets and say these are way too fast, and cars are just flying through them and too wide. And they'll say it's going to take us years and millions of dollars to fix. And we'll say, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it on Saturday. And we'll fix it as a neighborhood. So it's a chance for us to look at these places and with our neighbors, gather them and say, let's just try to make these changes ourselves. Now, see how it works. Try it before we buy it. If we like it, we can fight to make it permanent afterwards. And now we get brought into cities all the time, looking at different issues and problems and helping these communities do better block projects. This is an example of a project we did in Akron, Ohio, and a few other cities that basically shows we walked through these streets and we said, okay, these are the empty buildings. Here's the empty lots. Here's the streets that were built. How do we transform these places to make them more vibrant and make them work even better? We walked around the neighbors and we said, okay, here we started cataloging. Here's this property owner owns this building. Here's the person that's always wanted to start their own business. We made maps of the area, look at the streets. How can we transform the streets? We worked with the city's public works department. We fill up their official equipment with kids' finger paint. We take neighbors and kids in the community and take white duct tape, and then we put it together and we make bike lanes. And we put street trees along them to create shade for the sidewalks. We make crosswalks that are colorful so people can want to use the spaces more. We take empty lots that have been empty for 50 years with nothing in them. We take some soil and some hay bales, and we turn it into an Italian plaza so people can experience this as a community. We take turn lanes for cars that weren't being used anymore because the traffic counts had dropped. We made bocce ball courts with the Italian Fraternal Order next to this site. This bank building had been closed for 10 years, and the streets were empty around it, but overbuilt. We just took some paint and some tires and some planters, and we showed how the community could make it to a community space that we could use. This is actually a different project. This was in Duluth in November. They were talking about winter and how it's too cold to make great places. And we said, well, how can we actually make this a place that's inviting during the winter? And so we took this empty parking lot, and we built a structure. We put fire pits outside. We put blankets on the chairs. We served hot chocolate and mulled wine and showed how people can linger in these spaces even when it's freezing cold outside. This is a billboard vinyl that we use from the vinyl, the posters that are on the giant billboards on the side of the highway. We made water parks for the kids in the neighborhood. This building was slated for demolition. We were able to save it and turn it into a small bike shop. And again, an example of an intersection that, again, all we did was use white duct tape and finger paint to show how the neighborhood could reuse this. And this is neighbors and residents getting to actually bicycle along their blocks and see them at a slower pace and enjoy them as a community. We've had other projects where we look at it, we're like, well, this one's going to be really tough. This is an area that had high poverty, high crime. There were liquor stores on every corner. Like, how do we fix this area? And we also saw like empty phone booths that had been there for 20, 30 years, weeds overgrown. But we would go around with the neighbors, and we like ride bicycles in the neighborhood, and we'd find, in this neighborhood specifically, we found all of these little shotgun churches in the neighborhood, and we thought, okay, we could hear gospel music. So we thought we got gospel music. And we saw guys outside in their front yard who were smoking barbecue because the gas had been turned off. So they're cooking barbecue outside. So we got barbecue and we got gospel music. Why don't we throw a better block gospel barbecue for the neighborhood and just use what the community already does well and celebrate the unique identity and culture of this space with the neighbors. And we'll take that place that looks cold and dystopic, that people don't want to be around, and we'll transform it into a place that's beautiful, that everybody deserves in the neighborhood. We'll take those guys that are smoking barbecue in their front yard, and we'll put them actually on the street and help them start little small businesses in our community. We'll take those choirs and put them outside as well, so we can actually hear the music that's behind the doors. And when people say that, you know, this is Dallas or it's the U.S., this isn't Paris, you can't have these great places, I found you absolutely can. It's not hard. We just need to think differently about what we aspire to and the possibilities in our community. We have rich cultures. We have rich entertainment, arts, all kinds of foods that we can be pulling from to make these places special for people to linger in and enjoy being in a community. And now, if you want, you can go to our website. We are a nonprofit, betterblock.org. Go to our website. We have our recipes online for making your own green bike lanes, your own Italian plazas. This is our office. So we have things like bus stops you can download. We have bike racks, community garden boxes. We've got greenhouses, bleachers to make baseball fields near parks or theater areas, outdoor theaters, putt-putt golf courses. We can turn parking lots into putt-putt golf for kids. We can make band shells. This is our staff in Aberdeen, South Dakota, making a band shell. This is actually taking away a parking space and turning it into a deck so people could sit out. It's called a parklet. They can park their bike, they can wait for the Uber, or they can go get a beer and sit outside and enjoy being with their neighborhood. We actually worked with the Wisconsin Dairy Association and built a giant barn. Actually, that we installed in front of the Capitol in Madison last year. And this is that site in Duluth where we actually re-visioned the idea of what a train station would be coming back to the neighborhood, kind of an exoskeleton of a building. And then just to have fun, we made geodesic domes just because we had some free time on our hands. But we also take those drawings and those ideas and we bring them to the locals, the kids in the schools and in the trade schools, and we teach them how they can take these files and start using them to fix their own neighborhoods and fix their schools' courtyards and make them into great places. This is kids that we work with in Florida, helping them show how they can fix their parks as well. And that Better Block that I started in 2010, honestly, just because I wanted a place to have a cup of coffee and maybe ride a bicycle safely in my neighborhood, started getting a lot of attention. And people said, we want to do Better Blocks in our own neighborhood. So I open sourced the idea, I put it online, and said, anybody who wants to do it, here's how you do it. And it created an instruction set. And within a year, it started going around the country. And the next year, it started going all around the world. So everyone from Melbourne, Australia, all the way to Tehran, Iran. And I tell people, when people in Tehran, Iran call me and ask me about breaking laws, I was like, I don't know about breaking laws in Tehran, Iran. I think their stakes may be a little bit higher. So I'll go back to the trolley car story and tell you kind of what happened with that. This is my team, some of my team members. Luis Salcedo is the engineer that called me. He's in the back, one of my mentors to this day. But this is us studying Portland's trolley car system. And we were like, we wanted to know how they did it. They said it took us 30 years, and it was really hard work and almost didn't happen, but to stay with it, it may happen for you. So we went back to the city of Dallas and said, we want to apply for some grants to see if we can bring back our trolley car. They laughed at us and said, okay, Oak Cliff Transit Authority, apply for all the grants you want. We applied for one called the Tiger Grant. It was the first year it ever came out. We had 0.3% chance of getting any money whatsoever, but what happened was we won millions of dollars. And instead of taking 30 years to bring back our trolley car system, we brought it back in 5. And all I did was build a website. And what that has done for our neighborhood has created all of this new mixed-use development, people moving back to our community. We have all along that spine, it used to be empty fields, and now people are coming back and moving and starting little buildings and businesses all along the streetcar edge. So a lot of things happened. I started working with more friends in the neighborhood and say, what else can we do? We found these quick ways to make things happen really quickly. We started a restaurant with some of our friends from the early Better Block days. I got to have dinner with the First Lady. I got to lecture at Harvard. I decided to run for U.S. Congress because I had a spare April. So we did all these great things. Like I thought, what can stop us, right? We found all this great stuff to make things happen in our neighborhood quickly. But the one thing that completely stopped me was in 2012, I was diagnosed with stage 3 cancer. And then everything stopped. And at that point, I thought, well, what was all of this work for? I'm not going to get to watch my kids grow up. I'm not going to get to ride this trolley we helped to bring back. I'm not going to get to take part in these little businesses that we were helping seed in our neighborhood. But when I was at my sickest and I needed help, my neighbors and my friends started knocking on my door and saying, hey, we want to help out. We want to take your daughter to go out shopping at the mall, or your son to go fishing, or they started filling up my fridge with food. And when I was at my absolute worst and could barely move, they started doing these campaigns to help, let's build a better Jason to fix me. So I tell people what I got out of this Better Block work. It wasn't bike lanes, it wasn't cafes and streetcars. That stuff's great, right? And I love that stuff, and it's kind of a byproduct of a healthy neighborhood. What I got was a neighborhood. And that's why we do all of the work that we are doing. That's why you guys are all right here right now. We all want the same things. We want a place that we can thrive. We want places that we feel safe. We want our families to do well. We want to look back at the end of our lives and say, look at these great places that we built together that we're going to hand off to future generations. And once we started figuring out all of those things, we figured out there are ways for us to short-circuit the system and make these things now. We don't have to wait 30 years for those great places. Not only can we make them quicker, but we deserve them sooner. And before I forget, in 2013, I was diagnosed as being cancer-free, so I'm going to be just fine. So, all right. Thank you. All right. With that, that's kind of the Better Block work, the overview. I'm going to probably tell a little bit more here about, you all have a survey that you received. And this is how we start pretty much every project. They happen pretty quick. We're probably going to be back around 100 days, I think early September, when the project will actually take place. But in the meantime, you'll have these questions that ask you things like, what do you like about the area? What don't you like about the area? What would make it better? What would make you want to bring more people out? What's missing? Tell us who you are, what you do, what your skill set is, if you want to be involved. Tell us who's missing, because we absolutely know we don't have everybody here. We always hear that, well, how come we didn't invite Joe or Judy or this one organization? It's hard to get everybody, as you guys know, in a room. So we look to the community to help us identify who else can help make this the kind of place that everybody deserves in a rapid time frame, so we could celebrate that as a community together. We also have, I think, at the back of the room, we've got some of the examples of the WikiBlock furniture that we can assemble, so you guys can see how that works. And with that, that's it for me. Thanks, guys. Sure. You guys have any questions? Or ideas? I love to hear about things from the past. You guys, it says like, there used to be the X that used to exist here, and we all went to this parade and no longer happens anymore. Or the kids all had this thing and it's gone. Does anybody have any examples of things that you remember from West Allis past that you wish was here? Yes?
I always hear about the Western Days Parade. I wish that would come back.
The Western Days Parade.
A big event in West Allis.
Wow. So ideas like that we can kind of research and look at and find out, well, what happened, why did they happen, and what were they all about, and then why did they potentially go away? Any businesses or anything like that you see that used to be here that we wish were still here or integral to the neighborhood?
I drove around the neighborhood and I counted like 13 or 14 addresses that are all vacant businesses.
Okay.
So is this going to address a lot of them? Because a lot of them have been vacant for 2 or 3 years. I've been here since 1975.
Yeah, good question. So he says there's 13 or 14 different vacancies he saw. So absolutely, we'll look at different opportunities within a block constraint and try to figure out, well, which ones are available to us here. We'll reach out to the property owners and we'll help do the legwork to say, let us temporarily transform the space, talk to the community, and say who here in the room wishes they always wanted to start a business, because we want to use the people that live here in the neighborhood. Like my community thought we need to get a Chipotle, and I was like, we don't need Chipotle. I got a guy in my neighborhood over here that actually knows how to make tacos better, and so how do we get that going? So same idea. So if you guys have ever dreamed about owning or starting your own business, please put that on here as well so we can help facilitate that. You have the economic development staff at your disposal. You have transportation engineering staff, planning department. Everybody is going to work on this together. You have the mayor standing here next to me. So you have all the things we need in order to start clearing away the hurdles to make the kind of place you deserve rapidly. Okay, yes.
Like anywhere else, this area is high drugs, crime.
Okay.
We have all the rental properties, all of that in this area.
Yeah.
That's always major.
Yeah, so we're addressing crime. We'll address that with a project. We've worked in extremely high crime neighborhoods. In fact, we're working with the police right now in a neighborhood, and 2 neighborhoods actually. We're setting up a police storefront within a neighborhood to show how they can actually be more integrated with the community. And so all of those ideas, bring those to the table. Okay, I feel like I'm getting away from you guys and the pizza. There is free pizza over there, and I don't want to stop anybody from getting to that. But I do want to thank the city of West Allis for helping pull all of this together, for bringing us out. I want to thank the mayor for all of his support and efforts in this work. And I'm going to hand it over to him to see if he has any last-minute thoughts as well.
Thanks, Jason. I just quickly want to thank all of our staff that was involved in putting this together, too, from the city. Patrick and Jill are over here on the front corner. Stand up, wave. They work in our community development division. I introduced the alder people. From our planning department back there, we have Steve, Katie, Corey. The guy blocking all the light coming in from the door back in that doorway is Officer Nelson. And then Sean Miller has been invaluable in this. He and I were both out on weekends knocking on doors. He has really helped take the lead on this, setting up meetings with a lot of the residents and business owners to try to build this momentum. I am really happy so many people came out tonight, and I hope that if you have a neighbor that you may have talked to and they said, well, hey, what is this about? Are you going? And they say, I can't make it. I had a call today of somebody who wanted to be here, but it's the final episode of Big Bang Theory, so she couldn't make it. Doesn't have a VCR. But if you know of other people that might have building skills, that might have connections to materials for building, that might have ideas, that might be building owners, that might be bakers. We won't try to build the flower shop competition just yet, because we have one here. Big space for her, okay. We'll be around if you have any questions offline, but I'm really appreciative that you're all here, and I really hope that we can build off this, and I really hope that we can make 60th and Burnham what you hope it will be and what you want it to be. So thank you so much.